Good morning, everybody. Hope you're all settled in, and thank you all for joining us for today's webinar. Today, we'll be going behind the data and examining what all retailers need to know to meet customer demand this holiday season. For all you newbies watching, I'm Ali Thiam. I'm the editor of Power Retail, and as always, it is lovely to have everybody here today. With so much data, insights, and valuable information here in this webinar, I cannot wait to jump right in. But first, we do have a little bit of housekeeping to get through. If you have any questions for the speakers today, we encourage you to ask them in the questions tab, which you'll be able to find on the right-hand side of your screen, and we will do our best to answer them at the end of the webinar. Today we have Ben Franzi, the General Manager of Parcels and Express Services at Australia Post, Dan Ferguson, Chief Marketing Officer at Adore Beauty, and our very own Natasha Sholl, the Insights Editor at Power Retail. Ben Franzi has more than 25 years of global experience in the e-commerce, retail and government sectors. He's worked with Australia Post for 12 years, leading the integration of its supply chain services and global e-commerce platforms, as well as the creation and management of new marketplace offerings and e-commerce platforms for Australia Post. Dan Ferguson has over 20 years of experience in the e-commerce and digital marketing space. Prior to his role as CMO at Adore Beauty, he has had extensive roles leading e-commerce, multi-channel and online retail businesses, including Vistaprint, Officeworks and Dell, with a consistent average of 2.5 business or portfolio growth across his tenure across these roles. And last but not least, we have Natasha Sholl, who has been in the e-commerce industry for over a decade. As part of the Switched On memberships team, she reports the latest data based on consumer surveys and e-commerce analytics using Power Retail Benchmarking Index. This helps retailers understand key e-commerce metrics and how they're changing over time. She came to Power Retail after working as a lawyer in banking and finance litigation. So this December quarter is set to be the biggest for online shopping on record. With online adoption well underway, retailers need to take action to ensure that they are providing exactly what consumers want if they want to stay ahead. Today, we'll be examining and underpinning these changes in consumer behavior, from cart abandonment to stock levels to dreaded returns. Power Retail and Australia Post have teamed up to share these targeted insights on Australian e-commerce with the Australia Post and Power Retail Insights report. This gives retailers the support they need in the lead up to the December quarter. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So Ben, could you please explain a little bit about what we're seeing right now in online?
Yeah, so online obviously is going through a complete reimagination, and a lot of that's due to lockdowns. And you can see the vast amount of time that the country has spent in lockdown. And we know that pre-lockdown, we were seeing penetration rates, total retail versus e-commerce about 11.5%, and we're sitting sort of close to 19s. And at the moment when we're in lockdown, and we probably expect that to come back to about 17s as we move out of lockdowns. But you can just see the amount of growth that has gone on since 2019 and the big lockdown periods where you drive a lot of conversion. The good news is a lot of the consumers are staying in that market and continue to buy in that market really strongly.
Absolutely. And Natasha and Dan, have you seen any changes throughout the e-commerce industry and increased online purchases that reflected in Adore Beauty or just in the e-commerce space in general? Start with Dan.
Yeah, look, for sure. At Adore Beauty, we had 48% year-on-year growth last year, FY21, and the pandemic had a fair part in that particular lockdowns. What's interesting is that as those spikes come through, there isn't a return to normal. The curve continues and a new baseline is formed. I think that's the important thing. When I look at this graph too, two things, there's two messages I get from this. One is don't be lazy. As a retailer, there's a lot of growth in e-commerce, for better or for worse, because underpinning that is what we're going through as a society. But nonetheless, for e-commerce, it's driving more people to buy online for the very first time. And as they buy online, they'll be buying online in the future. So if you're sitting in your e-com business and sort of marveling at the growth, make sure you benchmark that against your industry, your competitors, get a feel for how well you're doing in your market. And if you're in an omni-channel business and you're getting really astounding growth, I think make sure you get a net zero look at how much of that is your customers transferring over, and is there any leakage as you're growing. I think it's an important thing to check and understand. And that's my first one. Don't be lazy. I guess that's a bit of a bit of a negative term, but I think that's sort of keeping yourself on your toes. And the second one is be prepared. There is a peak coming. And if you look at sort of the curve last year and its relation to Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and where we are now, there was, not dissimilar environments. We had lockdown peaks and then sort of start to slow down through the November period. So there's going to be some deceleration from the lockdown sort of like changing in their conditions. But at the same time, if you look at that ratio, there's a big peak coming. And so think about how you're going to manage that demand, how you're going to manage not just the demand or the sales, but the attendant things like the calls, the customer needs, the deliveries, and the stock and all that sort of stuff. I'm sure everyone's already doing that, but then think about how you can spread that demand out, any opportunities you can to perhaps spread that demand out, because we know that Australia Post has flagged as well that the Christmas period is going to be very busy.
Absolutely.
And I think what we're seeing as well, Ali, is that similar to what Dan was saying, the lockdowns may push people online, but that behaviour has led to a permanent shift. So there's brand new demographics heading online that have never shopped online before. It's creating shifting behaviour patterns that if you say this isn't just reactive spend, this is now a long-term shift, and they make sure that their strategy is in line with this complete shift in consumer behaviour.
Yeah, and it's not only just consumers, but it's also industries. Different industries have experienced different waves through this pandemic. And when I think about the original lockdowns, we saw panic buying around toilet paper. So Who Gives a Crap is a great example, who suddenly went from selling a little bit of toilet paper, in my terms, not theirs, to lots of toilet paper. But then you went into beer, wine and spirits, home office equipment, and then eventually toys, games and stuff when kids weren't going back to school. So we do see these fluctuations around the different industries, around the different lockdowns and what that does. But yeah, overall, as I said, we're sitting at about 5.9 million households shopping regularly at the moment, and shopping much more regularly, like multiple times a month, multiple times a week than we've ever seen before.
Definitely. And Natasha, could you please explain a little bit about the average conversion rate from last year compared to this year?
Absolutely. So as you can see, the current conversion rate is sitting at a really high 3.3% industry average, and that's coming off that super high peak of 4.2%, which aligns with Australia Post's sort of that really strong period back in August that you saw in the previous graph. So the ACR recorded in the August-September period aligns with some of the largest weeks in online deliveries in 2021 to date. So we can see also in those peaks and troughs, we don't just go up and suddenly come back down again to normal. The benchmark for what is normal has shifted completely. Dan, have you seen a kind of shift in your conversion rate in line with lockdowns?
Yeah, look, I think what obviously we had great growth last year, and some of these peaks were a mix of that. What particularly is interesting for me here is some of those really pronounced peaks, and when you tie those back, they do sort of correlate to some of the big industry-wide events like Afterpay or Click Frenzy, and I think that the responsiveness to those promotions and those events is getting even sharper, and you can use that as data as well as dot points for your preparations for Click Frenzy and for Cyber Weekend coming up. I also think that when you see a conversion rate increasing, like we are seeing that curve going up and to the right, when you see a conversion rate increasing, underlying that is that it opens up new opportunities. So when you're testing a website, the conversion rate is your limbo bar, and under a certain point, the business just isn't viable. And as when you're seeing that conversion rate going up, that's making new businesses viable. It's also making new categories and consumer plays are viable. So interesting to watch that. It's interesting to evaluate that. If you're a business, you're trading right now, what does that mean for you? What new products, new categories could you sell into? And what does it mean for your loyalty rate and how you're attracting, what your mix of new and existing customers are as well?
Yeah, and look, different industries do experience different conversion rates and different approaches. So when I think about the whole personalization piece, like their conversion rates can be above 10. If you're doing a product like Tiny Me's, for example, where they're allowing you to personalize the product for your kid's name, they get very high conversion rates. Typically also we see the same in alcohol and wine, because you're buying what you know you're going on to buy. And they're very loyal, and actually it's been one of the growth stories through this period is the growth of alcohol and wine through the online, because previously it had been stable for a number of years. It had ticked along sort of maybe even a fraction under the overall e-commerce growth rate, and then it's had a complete reinvigoration. But your different industries drive different conversion rates. I don't know, and I'm going to put on the spot and ask you what Ador's conversion rate is, or if you know what the sort of the beauty industry is typically getting.
Yeah, look, our conversion, I don't think we disclose that, but I can say that we have different conversion rates for new and existing customers. And we'll also talk about this in a slide a little later, looking at the shift of audience away from their first, how they're shopping, and whether they're going to search first, marketplaces first, or direct to retailer sites. And I think this reflects a bit of that, is that our consumer base is getting more confident shopping online. And so their conversion rate is reflecting them. They're going straight to site. They're more confident about purchasing as well. And that has its own implications, as in terms of how you're going to position your business to encourage first and direct traffic, whether that be through app, loyalty programs, reach and frequency of your retention marketing campaigns. All of those are important sort of points in your approach to drive traffic going direct to your site when they're looking to shop, and taking some benefit from these increasing conversion rates.
Yeah, and look, I guess sorry, Natasha, you go.
Thanks to what you were saying before, Dan, you might think, wow, our conversion rate is skyrocketing, but actually you can't get complacent. What's happening in the industry? What are your competitors doing?
That is the lead lining on the cloud. I love it, Natasha.
And I guess my final comment here is it's still only 3.3 or averaging in the 3. So it's not like we're getting really massive conversion rates. And with the cost of trying to get a first-time buyer onto your site, it does reinforce how important it is for that repeat business, which we'll talk a little bit further about as we get into it. So return users or customer loyalty is really critical to the success of your online shop at the moment.
Definitely. And on the subject of conversion rates, let's discuss a little bit about cart and delivery abandonment rates. Sorry. Oh, it must have been the earthquake, muddled up my brain. So I'd like to actually throw this out to everybody, discussing about cart abandonment and deliveries. So I'll start with Natasha, actually, a little bit about this.
Sure. So these stats are based off our fortnightly consumer surveys, and what we've found is the sweet spot for when consumers will look at the delivery costs and say, "No, I'm out," and abandon their cart. So for a small item, it's around the $8.60 mark, and for a large item, like a couch or something like that, it's around the $97 mark, which shows that that consumers are actually quite reasonable. They understand now, especially with everything going on, what goes on behind the scenes, what it takes to deliver a parcel, what's involved in the whole process. But the issue for them isn't necessarily the cost itself, it's how you communicate that cost. So if they only find out at the very last second that there's actually a cost involved, that's when they're going to abandon cart. We can see 86% of consumers will abandon cart if that cost is communicated too late in the game.
Yeah, look, we would really echo that to some degree. Whenever we're talking about delivery and cart abandonment, that there's two bits: is full transparency as early as possible, and then the second bit is choice in your shopping cart. You can see quite a bit there is delivery slow is two methods. So if you're not operating or offering multiple speeds of delivery, you're missing out. Like, it might be that 90% of the people are going to pick standard, but that 10% or that 5% or that 1% who really want it urgently, you're losing someone who is going to be a loyal business if you can't offer that. And similar around click and collect, it's a big movement at the moment, whether that be into a locker from an Australia Post point of view, whether into one of our retail shops, or even our third-party partners like an IGA or one of Coles. Just being able to provide that variability when it doesn't necessarily suit to get home delivery is really important, so that consumers have choice. And that's probably the key word for us, is choice, and being able to provide the choices associated with getting your parcel delivered.
Yeah, and I think you know, those unit prices per delivery there, 861, 97.44. I think they should be viewed in a perfect world. You know, if you apply your own competitive kind of context of your industry, your vertical, your category, then I think you move towards going, well, should I offer free delivery, or even should I offer free express delivery? What is required to address this particular part of the checkout experience? And when it comes to checkout experience, just echoing exactly what was already said, you want the fullest extent of your value proposition disclosed upfront. So a lot of people will go, oh, that's the details of the transaction should be in the cart, but it's the opposite. That should be upfront, and you want as little the details to be new news in the cart as possible. They should be well disclosed, almost on your homepage, product pages, all that sort of all those sort of areas.
I mean, it's really interesting, Dan. What we saw was pre-pandemic, we were seeing a big move towards express, and even an extension into same day. And then during the pandemic, we've seen that slow away. People move back to sort of standard shipping, but more recently, we've started to see the move back into speed as a marketing and as an offer. So definitely, speed is still coming back onto the radar for a lot of consumers, and a lot of merchants using it as a marketing way to increase the penetration of their shopping.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an investment. Just like we're going to go through this returns, I think it's an investment in conversion, and it's an investment in click-through. If you're confident right up front with a shop's ability to deliver your package for free or in a way that is lowest friction possible, then you're more likely to click through to the site on the ads that you see. And when you get there, you're more likely to convert. So I think that's the framing I tend to sort of give to your delivery offer and how you decide on that one. You need to test it, obviously, but.
Absolutely. And it is ultimately about making sure that customers are happy as well. And that leads us into the next point about stock levels, which is a bit of a pain point right now. So I'm going to throw this over to Ben and Natasha as well, just to discuss stock levels and the importance of being transparent for your customer. So Ben and Natasha, we'll throw it over to you.
Yeah, I'll jump in.
Yep, go.
Similar to what we were saying just before, I think transparency and communication is key, and it's just such an easy thing to do that retailers can be doing right now. So 54% of consumers have said that they've had an order cancelled after purchase because stock wasn't available at the retailer. I mean, that's just way too high and completely preventable. And what happens next? So 51% will abandon that purchase altogether, or 26% will head over to the competition. So you're essentially just giving away business. So again, transparency, visibility. If someone's added to cart, they don't want to know that shipping costs at the very last minute, and they don't want to place an order and then have it cancelled. It's just about that seamless experience, like every step of the way.
And there's probably a couple bits in that, like inventory management is so important in that. So sometimes you'll be advertising even stock on your website that you may not actually have to sell, and you don't discover to post that you don't have to sell. So inventory management is just a foundation piece of most businesses nowadays. But like, I was recently shopping for a balance bike for my 2-year-old, and when I got onto the website, the color I wanted wasn't there. So I'd come through Google. So of course I've just hit back and gone to another website that I can get the color from. So understanding the channel that your consumer is coming in from is also important in terms of how easily they're going to step out of your website and step into someone else's website. It's a balance here between wanting to obviously do a marketing for product that you may not have but is coming, and then also fulfilling. So I think you're understanding your merchant, so your consumer journey and the journey they're going through is really important in this piece. But yeah, there's nothing worse than trying to buy something and having it stock out, and it leaves a bad taste in most consumers' mouths.
Yeah, and just echoing that, but also for me, sorry, Natasha, do you want to go?
No, all good, you go.
For me, I think, the old school of when you used to do a big catalog sale as a retailer, and then it would draw all the traffic into your store, and as things sold out, it didn't matter because they'd go and shop other lines or other alternatives. Our new consumer is a little bit more mercenary than that. If their purchase isn't available, this data is telling us they're quitting straight out of your site, and in 26% of cases going straight to your competitor. So you definitely, and this is really topical coming into this Christmas season, whilst deliveries and actual stock levels are constrained, there is a acknowledged challenge there for many retailers of getting stock into their stores or into their DCs. So being aware of your stock levels at a really sort of micro detail and managing how you're marketing that with this in context, I think is a really strategic move with the Christmas and the holiday season we've got coming up.
And Dan raises a really interesting point. The Christmas cutoff just heightens that, because the last thing you want to be doing is buying something for a present and having it not be fulfilled or not turn up. So it just heightens the expectation around when I'm buying, I'm getting what I get. So whereas in other times of the year it might be less important, it's critical in that Christmas timeframe.
Absolutely, and you do run the risk of the consumer sort of feeling burned by that retailer and never shopping with them again. So it's absolutely critical, as you said. Moving on, still on stock levels, bit of a segue here about consumer behavior and how being transparent can benefit or be a detriment to the retailer. So I'm going to throw this over to Dan, because it is a bit of a door beauty related segment. So just jump in.
Thanks, Ali. I love me some of that Aesop resurrection. It just smells so incredible. Look, I think this is an example of disclosing your stock levels. I think there's lots more we can do, to be frank, but that's what we're working on all the time. I think that being in stock or out of stock, from a competitive point of view, if you've got looking at your really high traffic stocks and brands and categories, and being aware of where you sit in your competitive field, so that you can sort of change the focus and double down or back off your marketing amplification on the basis of where you are in stock levels, and knowing where your competitors are as well. I think that's a smart play for this holiday season. And there's lots of ways as well. As you can see here, this is in stock, but there's lots of ways as well of, when you do get demand that has been thwarted, capturing and giving them an offer to let them know the second it does come back in. And when you do let them know, it's all about reach and frequency, not just on the site, not just via email, because remember, email reaches maybe 5–10% of your base, but also via third-party platforms, remarketing. You can use those channels as well to let your customer know that their much-loved item is back in stock.
Definitely. And Natasha, do you have any extra data or insights that you would like to back up this slide here as well?
Yeah, well, it's similar to what you were saying before, Ali, whether you don't know if you go back to that retailer again if you'd had your order cancelled, and that's exactly what we've found. So 59% are either not sure or definitely wouldn't shop with that retailer again, just from that one negative experience. And you can see this image that we can see here through a door, that was found by clicking on the little tab that said holiday gift ideas, clicking through, finding a product that's, great for my mum. I can see it's in stock. I've got that confidence that I can add it to cart and it's going to be a positive experience, and then it's stress-free, seamless. So yeah, and not only that, but then I'll be more likely to shop with that retailer again in the future. So it isn't just about that one purchase, it's really a retention strategy as well.
Absolutely. It's all about trust with the retailer. So completely agree with that. So now we're going to move on to tracking, which is another really important part of the customer journey. So throwing this over to Ben, I feel like this might be within your wheelhouse quite a bit.
Look, visibility is just required nowadays. You've got to be able to provide full track and trace, full notifications of the stock moving through your warehouse and onto the consumer and where it is. We get fantastic use for our app, so the Australia Post app, which allows consumers to register and be able to track their parcels. It has brilliant usage. It enables them, or will very shortly enable them to actually manage their preferences. But look, I think there's probably sort of 3 or 4 moments in a parcels journey that become critical. The first one is obviously acknowledgement of the order. Hey, I've taken your order. The second one is when it's leaving the warehouse, in my opinion. Hey, it's on its way to you. And then you start to get into the movement through the supply chain. It's going to come on this day. It's coming today. And then, hey, it's even going to come between 12 and 2 o'clock today. So you try and manage consumers' expectations all the way through. And that's probably a core bit, because if you're not managing consumers' expectation around the delivery, they're likely to be ringing you. Especially if you're exceeding or you're longer than those expectations. They're either going to ring the carrier or they're going to ring the retailer and say, where's my article? And we find vast majority of the times for items that aren't being managed, when the consumer calls, the article's delivered 1 to 2 days after they call. So it's really about managing that experience, and you get a much higher NPS when you're managing the experience than them having to ring and say, yeah, it's coming tomorrow. And so that's a poor experience. So visibility is really critical.
Absolutely, absolutely. Plus, as a consumer, you do get a bit of a rush when you realise that your package has been dispatched. So if anything, it's just a bit of a mood booster too. And why wouldn't you want to have a bit of a boost in your mood when shopping with a retailer? So it's a win-win, honestly. But
every package just creates someone's delight. Someone's gone out of their way to shop. It's a delightful moment, and that's probably the core bit for me. Like we see some great merchants doing really fun things with their packaging. Adore Beauty give you the Tim Tam, right? That doesn't even make its way into my wife's hands. That typically goes straight into my belly when that turns up. But you've also got people like Bird's Nest doing really creative wrapping of goods, handwritten notes in the past, and other bits and pieces. So yeah, visibility and delight for me. If you can delight your consumer on that moment, you're likely to get a happy customer.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, Dan mentioned earlier about search and where consumers will go to find their favorite products. So we will be discussing that right now. Actually, I'd like to throw this over to Natasha. This is some power retail data, so I'm sure that she's got a lot to say.
Yeah, so this is really interesting, Ali. So this is a trend that we've seen overseas that is now sort of starting to make its way into Australia. So we can see that while Google is still the dominant place for product search, or that initial search for a product, it's already dropping visibly just in the last few months. So in May, 56% of consumers did a Google search to find a product. That's already dropped to 50% in August 2021. Research direct retailer, similar to what Dan was saying before, that's really quite steady at around a quarter of consumers will want a product, they'll know exactly where they're going, they're heading online with the intent to spend, and they'll go right to that retailer that they've had a good experience with in the past. So that's steady quarter of consumers. So where is the difference? Who's going away from Google? We can see that market are increasing in that first point of product search. So just from May to August, it's gone from 16 to 23%, which is a really noticeable jump in a short period of time. And again, I think just speaks to the way that consumer behaviour is shifting really fast, and retailers just need to be on top of that.
Couldn't agree more. And throwing it out actually to the rest of you, do you find any of this data surprising or interesting? I mean, I personally find it interesting, but do you guys have any extra tidbits that you'd like to add on to this at all?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, I find it really interesting. I'm sure Google finds it really interesting as well. And I think, you know, at Adore Beauty, we're working on delivering value to our customers and to our, you know, the people that we'd like to visit Adore Beauty, because we think we've got value for them. We're focused on giving them value so that they choose us and they go directly to us. And there's different ways you can do that as a retailer. You know, an app is by its nature a direct visit. Looking at ways of keeping in contact with your customer beyond just the transaction. So for us, we have a #1 rated podcast, which, you know, gets up to 200,000 downloads every month of people listening to us and listening to our discussions that we might have around the much broader subject of beauty for, you know, half an hour, 40 minutes. That means that we're on their mind, and so we'd like to hope that encourages sort of them coming direct to our site. I think what's interesting there is you look at that direct to retailers site, that's relatively static, even though marketplaces have been going up. So I think that some of that is about splitting down and understanding what it looks like in your category within that direct to retailer, because it's going to vary, I think, particularly around where marketplace goods are more relevant, whereas in some areas they might not be. So, you know, make it your aim to encourage customers to come to you. And to do that, there has to be a bit of trust. You need to be transparent, because they go to Google to get an objective view. So how can you provide some more objectivity, you know, by the ways of things like reviews, good content, interesting, engaging content, steer away from advertorials. So some of that is, you know, the stuff we do in Beauty IQ, on our blog, in our YouTube channel, and on our podcast as well. The earthquake has shaken my vocal up.
So Ali, from our perspective, because we've seen such an inflow of consumers into the market, what's been really interesting to track through is their buying behaviour during that journey. And Natasha talked on it. We've got new demographics coming to the market that haven't really transacted before, and a lot of what they did is they started with the big brands that they actually probably physically shopped with. So they went to the Kmarts, they went to the Targets. They're the brands that they've had loyalty with. They would have gone in, but that was the beginning of the pandemic. And by the time we now look at their shopping behaviours, because we did track them through, they're now buying from quite a large range of consumers. From retailers, and that can be different sizes. They're buying from big and small retailers. So what we've seen is a big broadening of that consumer group, and actually all consumer groups across the entire domestic market. Because that's been the other big shift here. Is we've seen in the past we would have talked about 30% of online would be overseas, but during the pandemic, for a number of reasons, we're at 90% domestic, 10% overseas. And so they're buying a lot more domestically, and they're buying from a lot of small, medium, large, and different industries across the Australian market. So it's really an opportunity for the Australian market and the merchants to really capitalise on that trend, those macro trends, and keep those customers loyal within our domain.
Definitely.
And I think one other thing too is that not all search is created equal. So if you're looking within that Google search component, there are customers that are searching at really high level generic categories. So which beauty retailer, or, you know, oily skin. And there are customers that are searching much lower and, you know, branded search. So they're searching your brand name in association with the product they're looking to buy. Then that tells you that you've sort of already in their hearts and minds, you know, won the right for them to go, hey, I think if I'm going to buy something, I'm going to buy it via my retailer because I trust them. So look at, you know, what your individual search results look like in terms of generic search versus branded search, and that will give you a read on, hey, how much closer and how good a job are you doing at driving more of that direct traffic and winning more of that trust.
Absolutely. And speaking of trust and transparency as well, we're on to our final slide, which is about returns. So I know that this topic is a bit of a touchy one for a lot of retailers. It's not something they like to talk about too much, but it's a very important subject that we need to discuss. So I'm going to throw this over to Ben and Dan as well, just to discuss the importance of returns and how retailers can make the most of it. So
yeah, I guess my first kind of comment is no retailer is the same, and you need to understand the economics and the product you're selling around where you land on that return curve, everything from free returns to essentially no returns. So that would be my first comment. You've got to understand as a retailer where you sit from an economic point of view. The second bit, with different industries, you really have different return rates. And so if I'm buying a book for example, from Booktopia, I'm pretty much guaranteed the book I'm getting is the book I ordered. There's not a lot of the colour differences and other bits and pieces. Where if I'm buying, let's say it's a shirt from the Iconic, they have a much higher return rate because of the issues around size, colour, and all the rest of it that goes into those scenarios. So look, understanding your industry, understanding your product, and understanding what the consumers want when they're buying those products is really important. And then if you land on the free return side of the world, make it easy. Make it up front, make it as a big ploy right at the beginning. It says free returns, free shipping, free returns. It instills confidence in the consumer to buy, and then make it easy as possible from the return. So again, coming back to return networks, big networks enable people to access product in or returns in lots of different spots. Street postal boxes, retail shops, third-party retail shops, even lockers, example, you can do those return type scenarios. So that'd be kind of my initial thoughts, Ali, around how returns. It is really critical, but it is industry specific.
Yeah, definitely. And Dan, do you have anything that you would like to add to this as well, based on Adore Beauty's experience?
Yeah, look, and not just Adore Beauty's experience. I mean, we do offer free returns at 90 days. I think the key here is to look at returns like an investment in conversion rate, not so much as a cost center, because you want to move that worry out of your consumer's mind and address it up front. Just like delivery, make sure returns are covered up front on your site, because it's part of the transaction proposition. And when you walk into a retail store, because it's been the same way all your life. You know what the components are for that. No one's going to drop in at the last moment and go, oh, look, there's a retail assistance service fee that we just need to charge you. Nobody does that in, you know, real life retail land. So you need to make sure that you, because it's, you know, especially in this time when a lot of people are new to shopping online or new to shopping in your category online, make sure that you make the proposition, the transaction proposition, what are the details of that, clear up front, so that they have trust and confidence moving into the shopping cart conversion. That's not where you want them to abandon. So I think it's the same goes for returns. I think that there's lots of great opportunities to do amazing things with returns and play around with that. So make returns easier for your best customers, or even more smooth or smarter. I think they're interesting things to look at. And the other thing too is that when you look at returns, don't look at it like a pesky, like, hey, this is a loss that we just have to manage. Look at how you can improve, you know, and reduce your return rate. You know, view your return rate as a sign that perhaps you could do more to cover to inform the consumer prior to them making the purchase. So we have a tool called Foundation, which allows people to match, you know, existing shades with new shades in different brands. And that helps people, you know, be more comfortable that, hey, this particular lipstick or this particular makeup product will be in the right shade for me. What are the ways that, you know, your business, when it comes to clothes, fit, 360 views, whatever it is, what is the ways that you can sort of give them more trust and confidence before they click convert, so that you reduce returns on the other end?
Absolutely. Now we are running out of time, so I just wanted to jump into the Q&A from our audience. So I'm actually going to start with Dan. I would like to know how Adore Beauty is preparing for the holiday period.
Oh, look, and I know there's a whole range of people on the call. You know, I think I'll be a little bit circumspect, but I think there's a few things, and I've already covered them, I think, to a large degree on this call. You know, looking ahead to that peak and understanding how we're going to prepare and make sure that we've got the right resourcing to cover that sort of customer transactions and expectations. Make sure that we're covering the attendant, you know, questions and customer service demands that our customers need to get as well. And budgeting and being aware of our stock position. I think they're all important things. I think it's an interesting season coming up as well, because you know, it's a collision of many things. There is the phasing of a slow change in our lockdown across major Australian states, and the emotional impact that will have for consumers, and whether or not they choose online or offline shopping. I think that means that it's harder to forecast, so that you need to be really agile and looking at the different metrics that your business uses, also macro metrics as well, and anything you can get your hands on to give you an indication. Australia Post might be able to help you there of the market. But they're all important things, more so than ever in such an unpredictable period. And as we go into December, where, you know, delivery might be constrained, and, you know, your cutoff times might change as well. Prepare for that.
Yeah, I guess that's a nice segue. So from our point of view, we'd encourage Christmas to come early. Don't wait for the Cyber Monday type sales, because it is going to be very, very big. So that would be an interesting thing, is how do you encourage your consumers to shop early so they get less risk associated with it. We're bringing on an additional 5,000 people between now and Christmas. We'll continue to shop on weekends. We'll have extended hours, all the things we try to do. But we are running two scenarios. One scenario is retail basically opening up to fully vaccinated, which is what's outlined in the current plans for New South Wales and Victoria, around about that sort of first week in November, last week in October. And if that's the scenario, then we probably think that the Christmas peak will be somewhere around about 15% bigger than last year. So really big, because last year was big, but around 15%. But if you're looking at retail being shut, so if any of those parameters change and retail is now shut all the way through to Cyber Monday into Christmas, you're looking at 30% volume growth on what we have today, 30 to 40% volume growth on what's on today. So just think about the amount of transactions that you're doing through your website and add 30 or 40% today, and that becomes a very, very big number. And the industry as a whole will really struggle, whether that be from pick, pack, stock, all the way through to delivery. That type of pure online Christmas, which we will never experience before, will be a sort of an extreme scenario.
And Ben, I have a question as well about the trends that you're actually seeing around home delivery versus alternate delivery options. And how does Australia Post expect this to change in a post-lockdown kind of world?
Yeah, right at the moment, home delivery is king because so many of the population is working from home. So we do seeing a lot of home delivery, but if we kind of fast forward 6, 12 months, you're likely to see a lot more flexibility in the workplace. Like we expect people to be in and out of the office, working from home one day, back into the office the next day. And so it comes down to that choice. So we really think alternative deliveries become a really critical choice down the path, so that if I know that I'm not going to be around this week because I'm in and out of the office, then I'll choose to put it in a locker, or as I said, I'll put it into a Coles or an IGA or into the good old licensed post office from an Australia Post perspective, because I can get access to that when it suits me. So I think really it's that trend around how we feel society will work and the way we operate as a society, which will actually probably make alternative delivery much more important than it was even previously, when we know I'm going to be at work every day so I can get it sent to my work address, or I know that I'm going to get it to a locker close to my work, or I know I'm now working from home, or someone's always going to be home. We're going to have that variability. So really certainty around delivery, I think, plays out much more in 6 to 12 months when we get into, I guess, more of a COVID norm.
Absolutely. And I think we only have time for about one more question, but I did want to also just touch on this, Ben. Is there any pressure on delivery network, mostly because of last mile delivery to the recipients? And if so, do you think there would be a circuit breaker with click and collect from shopping centres?
Click and collect is really important. So yes, big retailers are driving through click and collect, and they'll continue to do that. Look, yeah, there is pressure on from a delivery perspective. The volumes are really high at the moment, but they're also dealing with COVID restrictions in a lot of the processing facilities in a lot of the states. So we're not able to get to the same level of efficiency or the same level of throughput that we would normally do. So they're having an impact, and then the final impact is actually on the planes. A lot of product flies, and without the passenger flights operating anywhere near to the extent they do, that puts pressure on networks. So looking at multiple range, again, if I'm a merchant, I'd be looking at multiple opportunities to enable my consumer to get the product, and that would be, again, click and collect, putting it in store for collect from store, looking at alternative delivery models, and looking at home delivery, providing them as much choice as possible to get the most optimum out of their experience.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, that's actually all the time that we have for today. We'd love to give our speakers, Dan, Ben, and Natasha, a huge thank you for the time they've taken out to be here today, and also a massive thank you to all of the audience that have taken time out to join us. If you'd like to find out more about these insights, you can download your free copy of the Australia Post and Power Retail Insights Report, which you can find on the Power Retail website. And if you want even more Australian retail and consumer data and insights, I would recommend a switched on membership, which gives you full access to Power Retail's entire suite of shopper and retailer insights, plus the retailer top 500 rankings and real-time benchmarking data. You can actually enter the coupon code INSIGHTS to get 10% off an annual Power Retail switched on membership, which I wholly recommend. So thank you once again to all of today's speakers, and thank you everybody for joining. I hope you have a lovely Wednesday, relax and stay safe. We'll see you at the next one. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.